Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for Stranger Things Season 3, Episode 2. Alright, so I thought this episode was definitely just as good as episode 1, maybe even a little bit better. So I just did my review for episode 1 yesterday, so I'm going to try to do daily reviews until, of course, we get to finish the 8 episodes here for the season. I don't typically like to just, binge it all in one night, although I did do a lot of binge watching for season 2 just before season 3 started just a couple days ago. Just to refresh myself on some things, because it has been a year and a half or a little bit more than that, I think, since the last season. But anyways, I thought some really great, charming stuff in this episode, but a good mix of kind of that supernatural horror a little bit too, which I thought they really were kind of aggressive in this episode with. We saw a lot of that in this episode, and just for being episode 2 of the season, I thought that was I thought that was really surprising. I didn't expect to see this much this far into the story. But anyways, so if you enjoyed the review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Would really appreciate that. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this episode. What did you think of it, and what are kind of some of your theories, predictions going forward? I've only seen this episode. I have not seen any future episodes yet, and so I'm not, gonna divulge any spoilers from other stuff. And if you have seen future episodes, please try to hold back. But if you can't, that's perfectly fine. And leave those thoughts in the comments. Love to discuss the show with you. So anyways, we'll go through a little bit of a recap here, kind of touch on the most important parts from the episode, some of the things I really liked, and then we'll get to my rating, favorite character, and some more overall thoughts / theories of what this season could be going forward, and what type of stuff is going to come into play here in the future. So, alright, so without any further ado, let's start off. This episode starts off right where we left off, essentially, from last episode. We see Billy thrown up the staircase at that building there, and I'm still not sure exactly what kind of building it is. It looks like it's abandoned. Nobody lives there or even goes near that place, probably. Right, and so anyways, so he's thrown up this staircase, which we saw him being dragged down last episode. He runs out of the building right as fast as he can. Looks like he's a little bit bloodied in the face as well, so we know something happened down there. So he runs to his car, drives away to the nearest payphone, and this is when he dials 911, and then the person on the other end, right, the operator, says, what is your emergency? And at this point, he realizes that he doesn't even know how to describe this, and I think at this point, he knows that, okay, no one's going to believe me here, right? Like, no one's going to believe if I say, what just actually happened. And so he kind of realizes this, and then we see these visions also that he's having, very quick kind of cutscenes here, but he's remembering a bunch of rats we see all crawling around, and then it looked like some type of creature or some type of arm of a creature is like kind of biting his face or somehow like kind of honestly kind of like a squid in this, or an octopus, and that's the way I described the monster at the very end of this episode too. It kind of looks like an octopus where he kind of suctions onto his face and kind of like sucks his face a little bit. So anyways, that's what it looked like to me, but also I think that is why then he's a little bit bloodied, or he at least has kind of a scar on his face there. Anyways, so suddenly he hangs up the phone, and he's now in the upside down. And this is a really interesting transition to it when they had this kind of loud, really, really loud, kind of ear-piercing sound, and then boom, he's all of a sudden in the upside down, right? And then the call 911, he hangs it up. He walks out of the booth as he sees a crowd of people coming toward him, right? They're all walking toward him. And at this point, I'm like, all right, so the Russians, right? So these Russians got through the gate. They're in the upside down, and they are making contact with Billy. And I'm like, how do they get to Indiana that fast? Or like, how is this upside down connected, that far? Anyways, so it's not the Russians. We then see another one of himself come up to him. So this was really crazy stuff. So we get Billy on Billy here, right, in this scene. This was crazy. It's like we haven't seen this before. We've seen a lot of stuff in Stranger Things, a lot of stranger things, but this is definitely probably the most strange. Doppelgangers, right? Like, we've never seen this before. And so this is, pretty crazy stuff. pretty crazy stuff to say the least, for sure. So anyways, so we see the doppelgangers exist in the Upside Down now, and who are all those people in the other crowd too? Are those all doppelgangers of the people in the town, and this one was just himself coming to talk to him? We're not sure. And at this point, we don't even know what that conversation is until it plays out a little bit later in the episode. But a really, really great start to the episode. And then we get that intro playing. I love the music, by the way, for the intro. Just some stellar, stellar work there with that theme. And it's just so great. And they play it sometimes in the episodes when it kind of gets to the eerie, creepy parts or whatever. I thought that was really good. Anyways, so then we move on. We see Nancy enlist Jonathan's help in checking on the report from the old woman, the old woman about the rats from last episode. So we see them take off work for the afternoon together to go check out this story. So that was kind of cool. We see that Nancy is trying to, she wants to be a reporter, right? She wants to do what her and Jonathan actually do in this episode, but she's not given that opportunity there at the Hawkins Post, because she's kind of just a secretary, if you will, or even maybe less than that, kind of an errand boy, if you will, errand girl. So anyways, so she's kind of trying to break out of her shell here, trying to get through this story, and with the history of what they've seen, they definitely want to check this out and see what's going on. And I like the little part where she opens the photo room and Jonathan gets mad at her. Some funny parts there. But anyways, so they again get to the woman's house, right? Jonathan drives her there. He still has his car, by the way, right? He still has his car. A little bit more rust this season, it looks like, on that car, but somehow it's still functioning. I think he makes a comment about that too last episode. But anyways, so as they get to the woman's house, they find the rats have chewed their way through bags of fertilizer, right? Kind of weird. So, and the woman says it's very weird. She thinks that they might have rabies, and that would explain why they're kind of acting kind of weird, kind of crazy. They're going through bags of fertilizer, right? Like, are they eating the fertilizer, or are they just, letting it go on the ground? So, kind of a weird thing. Okay. Then we learn that she caught one of the rats in a cage, and we see this thing just going insane, just going nuts, right? We see Jonathan trying to take pictures of it, and it just goes wild, right? Just like trying to get out of the cage, running 100 miles an hour at each of the sides of the cage and all that stuff. And then suddenly we see it lie down. And it's like, what? Right? Like, this thing was just going wild. And all of a sudden, it just kind of lies down. It kind of like whimpers in pain, we hear. And Jonathan is kind of watching this all take place, right? But before he can see anything else of this rat, Nancy basically says that she has a lead on this fertilizer company, that they have seen some rats or something like that. I don't think we see the whole phone conversation take place there. But anyways, so he leaves with Nancy on this lead for this fertilizer company. But of course, right when he leaves, it all happens, right? So we then see the rat explode, right? Very similar to what we've seen before in the building in last episode. And as the lights flicker on and off in the basement. So that was really cool, and that's obviously been a really, really important or significant element, I guess, of Stranger Things. Those lights flickering, something bad is happening, right? So then we see these lights flicker on and off, and all of a sudden, this rat just explodes, right? It explodes, and so then we see so it explodes first, and then we just kind of see the guts just kind of sprawled out there, and then all of a sudden, the guts come to life, and it's like, this is just weird, right? And so we see the guts come to life and actually escape the cage. It kind of seeps through the little holes on the cage there, and this creature starts crawling away. Damn, right? So this was pretty crazy stuff here. To me, this was kind of my initial thought was, okay, this mind flayer, right, or this kind of dark shadow thing from the Upside Down is taking over the rats' bodies, right, and trying to kind of build this new host. And then we see at the very end that it looks like a lot of these kind of guts from the rats' bodies are all kind of piecing together and making this massive monster. And so it's going to be really interesting to see if that is what it is, and then the guts from this rat are trying to make its way to that monster to add to it and make it even bigger. So I'm wondering if that's what's happening. The Mind Flayer's putting together this new monster to try and take over or somehow open the gate. I'm not really sure, but anyways, that was just a really kind of eerie, creepy scene to see there. That was really great. All right, so then we get to a little bit of a more upbeat tone to the episode, where we see a bunch of the kids. So after Mike doesn't show up at Eleven's place, she calls him to see what's wrong, and we see that he lies to her about his grandma being sick. Of course, this is mainly because of Hopper's threats last episode, although we don't see that scene necessarily play out to the full. We know that they talked on the way home, which we knew exactly what Hopper was about to say. Anyways, so she's able to figure out that this is probably a lie, right? Even Hopper told her that, that Mike's grandma was okay, that, there was nothing wrong or something like that. And now we see Mike's mom get on the phone. Anyways, so that was just really a funny little sequence there. So meanwhile, Hopper couldn't be any more happier, just any more pleased. He's so happy. I thought this was a great sequence with him and Joyce kind of celebrating a day without Mike and Eleven getting together. Just an awesome stuff, right? He goes down to the store and like celebrates with her. I thought that was great. So yeah, that was a really nice sequence. Then we see, Joyce eventually stiffs Hopper for the dinner date later that night. So, Hopper just trying to celebrate the kids being away from each other for a day. He says the first time in 6 months. Which is like, maybe I don't blame him. Like, that's pretty excessive, I think. But we have to remember, Eleven is really bored there in that house, right? And she can't leave that much, if any, right? And she goes to the mall in this episode, but I don't know if Hopper would have been okay with that if he knew about it. And so we kind of get the idea that Mike and Eleven don't really have much else to do, and so they're just getting together, especially it's summertime as well now, so, things are happening. So, anyways, because of Hopper threatening him, Mike is in a tough spot in this situation. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't want to violate Hopper's, talk, but he also feels bad lying to Eleven, right? Friends don't lie. We get that in this episode. So, anyways, we see that he gets help from Lucas, from Lucas and Will, but mainly Lucas with his exorbitant amount of relationship advice, or relationship experience, I guess. Really great. And then we see Eleven gets help from Max as they both go to the new Starcourt Mall. And then we see the whole sequences play out with them. So that was great stuff. Really love all this stuff with the relationship, and then kind of the two groups that break up because of it, with Max and Eleven, the two girls together, and then the guys together, trying to figure out exactly the same thing, really, and trying to please the other side and see what they can do about it. Anyways, so that was great. All right, so now back to Billy. We see his doppelganger then. We go back to that scene. Tells him that he wants him to build what he sees. He says, I want you to build what you see. Really interesting stuff, right? And it's like, what? Right? Like, what do I build? What am I seeing? And then we see the whole segment he kind of snaps out of the upside down, right? And then he just sees an empty road, right? Nobody's there. So really interesting stuff. So he snaps out of it, and then we see him kind of back. We transition then to him at poolside because he's, a lifeguard, right? He's sitting up on his lifeguard chair there at the pool. But we see that he's not himself here, right? Very, very far from himself. He starts running to the shower, it looks like, to cool off this kind of burning sore on his arm. It doesn't look too good, and I'm not sure whether that is kind of a vision that he's having of his arm, or that actually is a real injury sustained as part of the car crash, or going down there and getting, hurt by this creature. I'm not sure. But anyway, so he gets to the shower here at the pool, and this is also after we see the whole scene with him and Karen Wheeler, which was a very interesting scene too. But anyways, so these black veins start spreading from this sore on his arm and start going up his arm. And then he begins to hear a loud scream sound from the upside down. And we kind of see this glimpse of the Mind Flayer, or the shadow figure. Very, very quick glimpse. I kind of had to rewind a little bit and check this out again. But it is the shadow figure here, and it's kind of that orange sky with the lightning hitting, right, that we've seen in Season 2. And so we see this little kind of kind of vision, I guess, of the Mind Flayer. And this is very similar to what Will experienced last season with him becoming this host for the Mind Flayer, those black veins spreading when it was in him, right? So really kind of similar to that situation. And then we see the girl, the other lifeguard girl, right, comes to help him, and he hears her say at first, "Take me to him." Right? And so it's really interesting stuff, but then he snaps out of it again, and she asks if she can help him. Right? So she, like, obviously she didn't actually say that. And so to me, my first thought is, okay, he has the ability to hear and see both the upside down and, you know, the real life or reality at the same time. Right? So like part of him is in the upside down, and his like doppelganger is inside of him as well. But then also his real self is here too. So is he a host, right? Is this a new host for the Mind Flayer similar to Will, or is this something different, right? So it's really interesting stuff here, and this also plays on the part 2 with at the very end. So we'll touch on that first, okay? So to end, we find out that Billy, we see, you know, vision at least of him choking that lifeguard girl back in the shower. So in that scene, we don't see it play out there, but later on he chokes this girl out. And he then takes her out of his trunk of his car. He goes back to the building there, takes her out of his trunk, brings her into the building with him. But this time, it doesn't seem like a vision, right? It doesn't seem like the vision of him hitting Karen Wheeler before, right? And that was just a vision that didn't actually happen, but that's something that he saw. This is real life, or is it? And that's what I wanted to touch on here, is that they made it now that we don't really know whether it's a vision or whether this is real. And I think they're trying to have us feel the same way as Billy does, and he doesn't understand which is actually reality and which is the visions that he's having. And so to me, I'm still not sure if this last sequence actually played out or not, or if it's just another vision of Billy's doppelganger, or Billy's upside down version, taking her to this monster. So anyways, nonetheless, we see it play out. So he lies her down on the ground, tied up, tells her it will all be over soon. And then suddenly this massive creature emerges, and I mean massive. This thing is huge, right? And it looks like the same kind of dark red rat guts that we saw before, right, in that scene, but only it looks like they're all kind of put together and molded into this creature, right? Much bigger. And this thing has various legs. Kind of looks like a squid or an octopus, as I said before, to me. And the way that the arm kind of comes up at the very end, there we see, it really does look like an octopus kind of raising its tentacle a little bit. But anyways, so we see the girl screams as it comes for her, while Billy just stands there watching it happen. And it's like, what? So that's what led me to believe that this might still be a vision, because of the way Billy reacts to this and why he wouldn't be a little scared, right? Like, or at least kind of, you know, get out of there before this creature comes for the girl. But anyway, so we'll have to see. I'm not sure. Going to the next episode, I assume that we'll probably get an answer pretty quickly here. You know, and I don't think the monster's going to kill Billy here, but I guess that's possible too. So we don't really know right now. But this was just really, really crazy stuff here. You know, to see this all play out and see this monster come up. Just really insane. So again, this monster looks like it was built out of all these rats that exploded in the building that we saw before last episode. They all kind of mold together, and now this thing is like massive. And it's pretty crazy. Of course, we saw that this monster, at least like some of the tentacles, I guess, in the poster for this season. So they did give that away, and for that reason, I'm assuming that this monster may not be the only thing that we see in this season. There might be some more monsters. There might be multiple of these things. I don't know. But so far, it looks like we only just have the one. But, all right, so then let's get back to the group. So the group's finally meet up then later at the mall as Elle and Max are leaving the mall. And some great sequences. We hear Material Girl song playing when Max and Elle are shopping, right? And then we see the boys kind of on the other side of things trying to, you know, buy something for Elle, get her a gift to basically apologize to her, but they're not able to afford anything. Mike's only got $3. So pretty relatable stuff there, right? I thought that was great. Great use of that Material Girl song. That was really awesome. And to see Elle kind of in new clothes for once and kind of exploring her own style, that was really refreshing as well. So, anyways, we see that, they come together there at the end. Elle can tell that Mike is lying to her about, his Nana being sick, even though he still sticks to it, right? Even Lucas tries to help him out and tries to recover the lie. But it's no use, right? Elle and Max have already figured it out. And so Elle steps up to him and says she dumps his ass. So that was really awesome. We see Max tell her that line before, and that's where she got it from. And then we see Max and her get on the bus and leave. But Mike looks devastated here. I mean, he really looks sad. To me, no doubt that they'll be back together soon enough. That this will all just kind of boil over. But it did look like Mike did actually really take that pretty hard. And then we see Will play, say, can we just play D&D now? That was pretty awesome stuff there for Will. And it's good to see him, being just a normal kid. I mean, think about how much this Will kid has gone through in the last 2 seasons. I hope that he has a little bit more, just relaxed, kind of being a normal kid for this season. But who knows? We already know that he's having some visions again as of last episode. So who knows what'll happen to Will this season. But I'm hoping not as much as what happened in season 2. Anyways, so I thought that sequence was really great, and Elle dumps his ass. Anyways, so we see Joyce and her magnets. This was a very small subplot in this episode, but I thought it's worth mentioning. She enlists the help of Mr. Clark to get her to basically help her explain why the magnets at her store and her house aren't working, right? The magnets aren't sticking to the fridge, and they're not sticking to the board at the store. And so Mr. Clark says it's possible there's some type of machine that could generate basically that much power, but it's highly unlikely. It would cost tens of millions of dollars, he says. So in other words, it definitely exists, right? So, Stranger Things, basically what they're saying is it definitely exists, and there is definitely some type of machine there, or some type of force. I shouldn't say machine, because to me, I think the force is something to do with the Upside Down, and I think this is also why the rats and Billy's car were drawn into that building, right? And maybe how these exploded guts are all kind of basically drawn to this single place where the monster is, and that's how it's built up all this time. So some sort of magnetic field is present in that building. Again, I'm not sure if it's a machine, but it's some sort of force that's definitely present there. So I thought this was nice to see Mr. Clark. I wasn't sure how they're going to incorporate him in this season because it's the summer, right? School's not on, and they're probably not going to have any interactions with him. So this was good. I wouldn't be surprised if this is it for Mr. Clark. This is probably all we've seen of him, but maybe not. We'll have to see. All right. So one of my favorite parts of the episode to end things off here was Dustin. So Dustin and Steve, some really great stuff here, a lot of charm. And then we meet Robin, too. I think she had a very small part in the first episode, but this is where she really kind of comes out of her shell a little bit. Calling Dustin a dingus, I think, or Steve a dingus last episode. But that's about all we got. So anyways, Dustin, with the help of Steve and Robin, figures out that the Russian radio transmission is code for something else as they translate some of the words to English. Robin kind of helps them out with that. But they also find that the music playing in the background is the same as the music on the Indian Flyer mini kind of horse ride at the mall. And Steve figures this out actually really quickly, right? He plays this thing that he recognizes the music from. He plays this ride, and then Dustin plays the track, and it's the exact same. So this was really great. Kind of a quick realization here. Steve, this is what he thinks. Steve thinks that the message didn't come from Russia. It came right here in Indiana, right? Or at least, not from Hawkins, but at least in this area, right? This music is here. This music is not Russian. And so this was a really interesting discovery here. And again, really great to see Steve being an integral part of this season. That's where I was really surprised in season 2, I have to say, to see him have such a big part in the way that ended and the whole way that story played out. And so to see him still having this big part in season 3 is really awesome. Really great stuff. And honestly, his character has maybe had the biggest arc of any in the show so far. So anyways, so did this transmission come from Indiana? Was that whole lab thing in Hawkins, but I don't think so, because we saw the generals walking out and it was all snowy. It looked like it was in Russia in the first episode. So anyways, we'll have to see on that one. I'm not sure what to think yet, but I'm sure we'll find out in the coming episodes. Alright, so in terms of a rating for this episode, I'm going to give this one a 4.8 out of 5. I thought this one was really great. The pacing picked up a little bit better than the first episode in that way, I think. A little bit faster pacing, a few more reveals, and kind of more plot in this one. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love what episode 1 did. I think it was a great introductory episode to the season, while still actually including some of that supernatural plot, stuff in there. But I thought this one just a little bit better. The pacing picked up a little bit. Some great charm and uplifting moments between the characters throughout. Thought it was really great. We got some really great sequences with Steve and Dustin, Max and Eleven, Mike, Will, and Lucas, even Hopper and Joyce. Joyce stiffs Hopper for dinner, and that was really great. Something I also didn't talk about was the whole protesting the mall and the whole downtown stuff that Hopper had to deal with. And that was interesting. I feel like that is going to play a part ongoing, or whether that's just kind of establishing a little bit more environment, which the show has done throughout the first 2 seasons for sure, trying to build that kind of environment of the 80s and this town as well, giving us a backdrop for this whole kind of story that plays out. Now, that could actually play a big part going forward too. I know the final episode is called the Battle of Starcourt, or the Battle at Starcourt. So we know that the most likely the final thing is going to be happening at that mall. Whether this whole protesting thing plays a part in that, I'm not exactly sure, but I guess we'll have to see. Anyways, some really great charm in this episode, and again, I feel like we didn't see a lot of this in Season 2. This is a lot of stuff that we saw from Season 1 that I just loved. And I feel like a lot of people loved and kind of fell in love with the show because of it. So it's really great to see that back. And I think taking a little bit of time, really kind of polishing this story and polishing the writing here really helped this season for sure. Getting into the supernatural element pretty quickly this season. In this episode, we already see this monster. And no, of course not the whole thing, but at least parts of it. And we kind of get a lot of stuff so far connecting this whole story. And this, I feel like, is a lot more than what we've seen in previous seasons. They're really getting into this one quick. You could argue, I guess, that last season had 9 episodes, so they weren't in a big rush to kind of get it going right away. But season 1 had 8 as well, and I felt like they didn't even go into it this fast. But anyways, really great stuff here in this episode and getting us into that supernatural horror element. And they're really using Billy to do it, which I would have never expected going into the season. I thought Billy might just be like a minor throwaway character this season. But he is really getting some big screen time and a big story arc in this season. And it looks like they're going to use that Upside Down through him, hopefully instead of Will this season. But we'll have to see what part Will plays in it as well. All right. So favorite character for this one, I got to give it to 11, played by Millie Bobby Brown, of course. I thought this was a great episode for 11. Of course, we're still kind of getting that whole, fish out of water, for lack of a better term, on my part. But kind of, her starting to learn the lingo and kind of the social constructs of things, right? Max trying to help her out a little bit, picking out her own style at the mall, dumping his ass, right? Dumping Will at the end there. So anyways, I thought this was some really great stuff. My only concern would be that it's been over a year, right, and she hasn't learned this stuff yet. I guess she's kind of been cooped up in the house there with Hopper, but I would assume that she would know more than she does right now. But don't get me wrong, I think it's still really great to watch and really kind of helps the story go along too with her character and her relationship with Mike. And so, yeah, I definitely understand it, but I think maybe she could have known a little bit more and had these experiences within the year that we have been absent, I guess, from the story, or been absent from these characters, if you know what I mean. But anyways, Millie Bobby Brown doing an amazing job portraying her. As always, I think she's one of the best, definitely probably the best kid actor, or child actor, if you will. I guess she's a teenager now, but one of the best actors in the series for sure, along with Winona Ryder and David Harbour, and she's doing an amazing job this season as well. So Anyways, guys, that'll just about do it for my review of this episode. Thank you so much for watching this one. Really like to hear your thoughts on it. And what are some of your theories going forward for this season? Love to discuss the season and also just the show in general with you guys. Really awesome stuff. But anyways, again, guys, thank you so much for watching this one. And we'll see you then next time for Stranger Things Season 3, Episode 3.